Let me now bring on board Mr. C. Jayaram, Joint Managing Director of Kotak Mahindra Bank, to talk about politics, economics and the business environment. Mr. Jayaram, good morning. Good to have you back on ET now. Thank you for joining us. You track politics with a magnifying glass. So what do you make of the current political setup, and do you think UPA 2 is under threat?
No, I think currently, clearly you have a situation where the government of the day depends on two parties which are outside of the government, which is the SP and the BSP for support to run the government. And I think obviously it's a fragile sort of situation because certainly the SP is not a party which is likely to wait for the full period till 2014. Given their performance in Uttar Pradesh, its chances are that they would like to sort of go for elections earlier. So to that extent, it's likely to be a fairly fragile sort of government going forward. And to that extent, it's unlikely that you will see any more substantive reforms coming from this government, at least for a period of time.
Jayaram, do you think it is going to be difficult for UPA 2 to implement any further reforms? I mean, should markets not bet on GST and FDI and insurance?
At this point of time, that seems to be the case because clearly on the back of those reforms which came last week, you had one of the coalition partners sort of withdrawing support to the UPA. So which means that they are now sort of dependent on support from two parties which at best can be described as unreliable allies. And I don't think they will want to take the risk of doing very much more in the context of reforms, at least for the next 3-4 months.
Jayaram, if your view is that we are unlikely to get any key market-moving reforms, what could be the next key triggers for Indian markets? Do you think it would be global, or maybe something like disinvestment, which will help us fix a macro?
Well, I think there are certain things to look forward to. I mean, hopefully, if the disinvestment program goes through in some fashion, I think that will be a positive. I think the fact that globally liquidity is rampant, both because of whatever is happening in the Eurozone as well as QE3, there will be reasonable flows of money which could come into India. So to that extent, the markets could remain reasonably all right. I mean, it may not run away, but it could remain in a reasonable sort of range, which could possibly afford the government to go through with some sort of a disinvestment program. I think that's the real positive that one sees at this point of time.
Jayaram, are markets working with the possibility that UPA 2 may not serve the full term, and are we prepared for that?
No, I think the sense is that UPA 2 will probably sort of drag on for a period of time. I think it's very unlikely that it will sort of fall within the next few months. So I think one sort of scenario is that sometime after the 2013 budget, the government itself might prefer to sort of come out with a reasonably populist budget and then sort of go for elections. And the other scenario, of course, is that it could go all the way till 2014. But I think in either case, it's unlikely that you are going to see any significant move forward in the reforms area, given the current construct of the coalition.
Earlier remark, you just indicated that you expect UPA 2 to survive the full term. So what makes you reasonably confident that we may not see early elections?
Yes, I think currently, even more than the Samajwadi Party, I think the BSP is unlikely to want early elections, given that in UP, the performance of the Samajwadi Party was significantly better than that of the BSP. So for BSP, early elections are certainly not something which they would want. And even for a moment, if you assume the Samajwadi Party would withdraw support, you could still have a coalition backed by the BSP from outside, which would probably still have the numbers to sort of pull through for a period of time.
Jayaram, the government has ambitious disinvestment plans as well. Do you think if the market conditions deteriorate, it is going to be difficult for the government to sell stake?
No, disinvestment itself is something which could happen over the next few months, depending on whether the markets are buoyant or not. So I think that's the one part which could happen independent of politics. But any other form of reforms, whether we're talking about increased FDI in insurance or the pension bill or anything of those sort, I think is unlikely.
Jayaram, if your view is that best of the policy reforms are now behind us and we may not get any more big, earning boosters from the center, do you think investors should continue to hide in defensives and they should currently in the near term avoid government-related and government-dominated businesses?
I think defensives, you have the problem that at least in the FMCG sector, valuations are extremely rich. So it becomes a little difficult to justify even remotely on valuation grounds, which means that then you're left with probably pharmaceuticals as a possible sector and to a lesser extent technology. So I think in the context of the Indian market where it's poised right now, I think you have to have a top-down call that there are going to be some reasons as to why the market will make a move forward. And if that is indeed the way forward, then you necessarily have to bet on some of the interest rate sensitives.